Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Simon, this is Brett.
Hello, this is Super. It's a punch on nose. And it's waving. What?
Do you know what I might do with him one day?
What?
I might get another bear and make him have a little fight.
Wow, what's the odds? You already got another bear.
I forgot about that. Anyway.
Super's replica.
I have been a wrestling fan since the 1980s. And since the 1980s, wrestling has changed an awful lot. Now some things have changed for the better and some things may have changed for slightly the worst. So what we're going to do is we're going to look back at some of my collection of toy wrestling belts. Now these are from 4 different companies and they go actually from now, right now, 2021, 2020, right back to about the late 1990s. So over 3 decades of them. So what we're going to do, we're going to go from newest back to oldest and see what's changed and what's improved and what's kind of got worse. So are you ready for this?
Are you?
I think so.
Doubtful.
And before we do go into it, I want to say a massive thank you to everybody that subscribes to the channel and stays subscribed. And to everybody else, I ask that maybe you consider subscribing, as it would really help our channel out. And the other day I was actually reading through the comments and there was a comment on there where somebody asked for a shout out. So Joseph's awesome videos, there's your shout out. And I did check his channel out and he is actually a wrestling fan. That's why I'm saying the shout out on a wrestling related video.
What's the odds?
Pretty good actually. So the first one is the AEW title. Now this is actually quite a funny one in a way, because when the AEW toys, like figures and belts, came out, the figures sold out really quickly. Now the problem is they didn't actually sell out to wrestling fans. They sold out to scalpers. So that's people that want to buy them and then they stick them up on the internet for like treble the price or sometimes even more than that. And like John Moxley was one. If you try and buy him now, people are asking up to £70 for him. It's a ridiculous amount of money. The funny thing about this though is there was lots of belts in the shop and they were originally £20 and this one was reduced to £12, but they've gone back up to £20 now and they've got quite a lot in the shop still. Now it does look pretty good. Now something I like about this is they have copied an idea that Mattel do for their WWE title belts. Now I'm going to show you what that idea is in a minute. And it's actually, I think on this belt they've done it a little bit better. And the reason is they've hidden it. So what they've got is you've got like this fake leather here. And it does look nice. I like the fact though you've got 5 plates on this one, whereas as you'll see on the rest of them you normally only get like the main plate and then the 2 side plates. You don't normally get 4. So 5, sorry, can't count. So it's a nice looking belt. I'm not going to take it out of here because it won't fit me, so I can't wear it. I'm a bit too old to go walking around the house like pretending I'm a champion. Well, so my wife says. She made me put my wrestling figures away and I'm not allowed to play with them. Meanie.
Sounds like a baby.
And on the back you've got a picture of Chris Jericho, the first ever AEW champion, and when he won it. And actually I might see in the shops if they're all the same as this now, whether they've got different ones, because I haven't actually looked at the back of one of these in the shop. I just know they've got loads of them, and because I've already got one I didn't look. So that's the first one. Now remember, I'm going to show you what they've copied but what they've done a bit better. So now we're going to go back, and this is to gotta remember the date now, 2012 this belt's from.
When's this one?
This one I just told you is 2019-2020. So this is 2012. Now any Mattel belts that are made for WWE are all basically the same as this. They're all pretty much the same style. Now what they've done, which is copied on this belt, is something that is a really good idea, but it's not aesthetically pleasing to me. And that's this, down here. They've actually made this into 3 bits of material. And they've sewed this bit on and then this bit on. The reason for that is when this like folds over like this here becomes a stress point, and all the like top of the material sort of comes off, which will become evident as we move along, because I've seen that. And just like any other belt, you've just got this. You stick your Velcro on to put it to the size of your waist. I think, who did we make this one fit? Was it you or Owen?
Don't know.
Yeah. But they look good, and what they do on these is these are made the same sort of way, where you've got these plastic rivets, if you want, to hold them to the material. You have this different rough of cotton polyester on the back, and then here you've got the little plaque that tells you who made it and when it was made. And they're nice looking belts. I actually like this one because as a kid I used to like the white Intercontinental belt, and I used to love this version of it. The version that was held by Razor Ramon, Jeff Jarrett, Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart, all the great wrestlers, even Mr. Perfect. And then they changed the belt and they brought it back, and now they've changed it again, which is a bit of a shame because I love this belt. But where I said they've done this on the AEW belt, and it's right between the plates, so you don't actually notice it so much. So it's still there, which means it folds quite nicely, but you don't see it so often. Whereas on the WWE belts, it's right there, and I don't like it being on show. But if you were to hang that up, you're not going to have so many problems with it. Right, moving on. What should we do? Actually, I'll stick with WWE because we're going to about 2010. Now we're going to look at WWE first, and then we're going to move on to another company, because there's 4 companies' belts that I've got here, and this shows you what can happen to your belts. This is one of the only 2 that I let Bret keep in his room, and as you can see, this fake leather material on here, it's all coming off because he had it hung up for a while like that, and it all cracked along here. That's why that material being done in 3 pieces now is a bit better, because it isn't going to crack, and it's a bit of a shame. And this is the old spinny title which John Cena brought into the thing. I'm not going to lie. If I was to have to rate my top 10, if I had to rate all my top belts, the one that would be dead last is the modern day world title and universal title. Next to that would be this belt, because it is not my favourite at all.
How dare you?
This is what?
There's nothing wrong with that.
It's a bit gaudy, to be honest. Like, when you look at the older belts, you see prestige, and like you think, oh, that's a lovely look to it. And because of my age, my favourite belt is a Winged Eagle, which we will do another video showing the more realistic replicas one day. And I do have a Winged Eagle. Well, I kind of did. I gave it to you when you were born. But again, the same plastic studs on the back, little plate to tell you when it was. The only trouble with these are, look, is you have this really small section here, and then your large section here, and you have to put the Velcro on to put it around your child like that. But then as he grows, this won't fit, so you'd have to keep adding more and more Velcro along it to make it fit him even. So if your kid's going through a growth spurt, I'd figure out a different way of attaching this to your child, because you're going to keep putting Velcro on it all the time. And there's bits falling off of this now. And that's really upsetting that this is all cracked. I didn't actually find out this was all cracked until the other day when I went and got it out of his room. Which, oh well, c'est la vie.
Hey?
C'est la vie. You didn't know I speak French, did you? Right.
You said you did terrible with French.
I did, but there's a couple of words I know. Now, we're coming up to, still in 2010, TNA. Now, they copied the same way of making the belts. That's what a lot of these companies do. They sort of see what somebody else has made and do them in pretty much the same way. Like, so here we've got the Tna X Division Championship. Now it's a nice looking belt, don't get me wrong, but it's got that same fake plastic kind of leather on it. It's done with the same kind of material on the back. Again, they've put the plates in there like the Mattel did with their belts. And it's a nice one, but it will, if I hung this up, get the cracking on it. I've had this one in a cupboard lying down, so it's not got that on here. But what do you think? Do you think these are nice belts?
It's alright. This one's clearly the better one.
You can tell we don't like the same things, can't you?
Yes.
I bet you can't guess.
How fun that one is.
I bet you can't guess who was my favourite wrestler of all time, could you? I bet Brett won't even remember.
Hello.
Can you remember?
No.
No. Okay. Then we've got the TNA World Championship belt. I actually like this belt. I think they should have stuck with it. I think it looks nicer than the Impact belt they've got nowadays. But they're all made the same way, and they're good. I do like these, but again, we've also got... This is probably the weirdest championship belt ever made.
Why?
Because it was from the stage where TNA couldn't seem to make their mind up about certain things. Now TNA have a bit of a reputation for not being that great, especially when Dixie Carter owned them. And this belt was brought into the company, and the problem was it was sort of given to Booker T, who's a fantastic wrestler. Because I actually started watching in the 80s when I was watching WWE, or WWF at the time. Then I started watching WCW because over here in the UK, we used to get WCW Worldwide on a Saturday on ITV. So for a while I was watching that. Then I was watching WWF again when I had cable TV. And then I was able to watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, ECW, and then I got to watch WCW. And I was always a big fan of Booker T. I thought he was a great wrestler, especially when he was in Harlem Heat. He was great. But they gave him this, and they called it the Legends title. Alright?
Why?
I don't know. They sort of had this thing where they wanted to make out like they were legends in wrestling. The trouble is, when he defended it against somebody who was new, you couldn't call the new person a legend. So when he lost the belt, it all of a sudden became the Global Championship. And that's what's written on here, is Global. And the problem with that is, global, what does global mean? Or globe?
Around the world?
It means world. So it meant that you had the TNA World title and a global title, which wasn't meant to be as good as the world. So they then changed the name again, and they then called it the Television Championship, but they never changed the belt. So you now had the TNA Television title, and then they got rid of that, but they brought the belt back again, and then they said, it's the TNA King of the Mountain title. It's like, pick a name, stick to it, and make a belt for it. Like, so this is the most craziest belt in TNA, to be honest with you. But it's one of the nice looking belts. It's a bit over the top with the jewels and everything, but I do like the red, and I do like the design. It's quite a nice belt. And then we've got...
main problem is it's too confusing.
I think it was the fact that they, for some reason, they just couldn't come up with an idea and stick to it. And it was like, think of an idea, go with it now, and then change it. It's a bit like the wrestlers, to be honest. Like, I like Eric Young, but for a long time, if you ever watch back old TNA, he would come to the ring, the pyro would go off, and he'd go and fall to the floor like he was scared of his pyro. Then the following week, they suddenly made him come out like he's some hard nut, and he's like the leader of World Elite, and it's like, it's not the way you do things. But there you go. That's just an old man having a moan.
Hey.
Here's the TNA tag title, and again, we've got that cracking in here, which is a bit of a shame.
Wait, where's that squid thing that takes the ships down?
said cracking, not crackin'.
You said Kraken.
Donut brain. What's your favourite out of TNA?
That one.
What, the global? The red one? Right. I do like that. I do like the world. I think he had some prestige.
Although this
to
one's
it.
still the best out of all of them.
Didn't ask you what's the best out of all of them. I'm not even going to ask you that question now.
Why?
Because there's no point. Right, now we come to a change. Because WWE used to have their figures and belts made by Jakks Pacific. And Jakks Pacific were quite good. Sometimes the quality of their wrestling figures was a bit questionable. Like, I went to Glasgow and bought a figure. I bought a lot of them, didn't I? And I came home and I was like, yeah, and I opened one up. I think it was Tito Santana. And I opened it up, got out of the box, and you heard a clunk. His arm fell off. So that was gutted. So Jakks Pacific used to make their belts, and they're very, very different. So here we go. The first one from 2002.
I was happy with that.
Now, can you see any differences?
Not really.
Not really.
Beside that,
Beside what?
it's got more texture.
Okay, it's texture, but is
More
there anything?
foamy.
It's a rubber, foam rubber. These aren't material. These were like a foam rubber one, and I love the plates on these. They're like nice, thick, solid plates, but it's foam rubber on here, so you can't sort of let them bend like that, because you probably end up breaking them. They're still put on with these plastic studs. Instead of a plate in here that tells you what the year was, you've got it on the back. It says 2002 and Jakks Pacific and everything else like that. But here's another thing. You know, I said if you put the Velcro on the other ones, if your kid grows, you've either got to move the Velcro or think of another way of putting them on. But this one, they used to tell you to measure your child and then cut it to size. But if you cut that off like they tell you to, when your kid grows, it ain't going to fit them. And also it takes, if you took all that off, look how small that is. That's ridiculous. So if you ever get one of these and you've got a child, you would never want to cut that bit off. But they look the business. I like this. Right? You've got the textures in there, like you said. And they've even made it try and look like it's got like stitching in the edge. And I like this. This was the Undisputed Championship. This is when WWE had bought WCW, and they merged the two titles together at one point and made it the Undisputed Championship. Then they wanted to make Raw and SmackDown in two different brands, and so this became the WWE Championship, and they brought back a similar belt to the WCW one and called it the World Heavyweight title, and they handed that to Triple H. So you ended up with two belts at that point. So this is a good belt. This was held by people like The Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, and many others. I do think when they went from the Winged Eagle, which was my favourite, they had a couple of changes. So if you don't count the Winged Eagle, this was probably the one I wish they stayed with after that. There's a nice belt. Now we come a year before. Now there's not much difference, except this is the European title from 2001, and it's kept the dirt quite well. It's kind of faded a bit. It doesn't keep up that great. This title, they decided they were going to do this because they were doing tours of England at this time, when they do it more often now. And the problem is, you would have thought they had to put this on an English person, which you had the British Bulldog, and they put it on here. Did they? Let me think. They had a match, and it was for the European title, and it was British Bulldog facing Shawn Michaels. And there was a lot of controversy about it because they changed the way that the thing's going to end. And watch that. It was some people don't like that match. So if you ever get a chance, go and look at it, and you'll see why people don't like it.
So why don't people like it?
I won't spoil it for people because I don't want to. There's a discussion about wrestling that people have, and I don't want to get into that discussion at the moment. But on this one, you didn't have the bits to cut off. It was just solid plastic. And actually this feels more stiffer than that one. That had more give to it. So I like this belt, but it wasn't a very long-lived title in the end. And also, it's a European title that didn't exactly get defended in Europe that often. And because of the way WWE is and the way America is, most of the people that held a European title was American. So you didn't get many Europeans holding that belt.
I wonder why.
Because there's more Americans than there is Europeans. And then you go to this one, which is from the same year, where they did keep that thing. So this one's later than that one.
So it's Velcro and that.
Yeah, and also, a bit different, you've got this other little plate here, which says, property of the World Wrestling Federation. What's that say? IMAR 2K. Okay, whatever. This belt, they decided they were going to have a light heavyweight title. First champion was Taka Michinoku, and he won it for a while. And then when they bought WCW, they decided that they were going to get rid of this one and keep the cruiserweight title instead. But it didn't even get defended that often. So it was brought in for a short while, and it was sort of like an afterthought at the beginning, which is a shame because there are some fantastic light heavyweight or cruiserweight wrestlers out there. One of my favourite was a guy called Juice Thunder Liger. And Ultimo Dragon, he was brilliant. So that's that one. And then we come to 2000. This is how you know when the change was done, because this is more like that European belt, where it's more solid. This is quite thick, this rubber. Like this isn't going to bend over your arm. You ain't posing with this in front of your mirror too easily, because you're like you smack people with the end of it. Like, look at me, I've got my belt. Smack.
I don't really want to be hit by a belt.
Bit solid, isn't it? It'd probably like get a bit softer over time. This is when they went from that first Intercontinental title that I showed you to this one, when they was trying to be a bit different. Which, nice belt, but I still prefer the first one. This one was held by great people like Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy. Right, now we come to something that doesn't get enough love anymore. WWF Tag Team Championships. Now think about this, right? You think now, all you at home, think of the great tag teams in WWE right now. You can't, can you? Because there's none there. Apart from maybe the Usos. They're probably the only real decent tag team there is. Or possibly the New Day. But you think back to the past, like the 90s and at times like that. You had the Hart Foundation, the Brainbusters, Legion of Doom, Demolition. You had loads of great tag teams. And the tag team division was a really great thing. It could have been that back then you could have a main event of the tag team titles or the main event of the Intercontinental. You can't do that no more. They've sort of, they don't give enough love to tag teams. So lovely belt. This is the this is actually one that I really love. This is one that was held by Legion of Doom and the Hart Foundation, stuff like that. But it's thick, and they've done that stitching, fake stitching, but it's really thick and stiff, isn't it? You wallop somebody in the head playing with that, they're gonna say ow.
Only say ow, not just fall over with a concussion.
Yeah. 1999. Do you know whose belt this is? This actually wasn't a kind of official WWE title belt. This, I've missed a year. I just thought of that. Because I put it in a different place. I missed, I think it was 2005. You'll see that in a mix. It's completely different to these anyway. But this...
Oh yeah. Completely overlooked.
This was the belt made for Stone Cold Steve Austin. Now, he got this because he wanted to have something a bit special, because he was like such a big name. And it is actually a great title with the smoking skull and the heavyweight champion. Doesn't say world yet. There is world up there. I like this belt. A lot of people did. There was also one done for The Rock, but I don't remember ever seeing him walk to the ring with one. But this one's quite thick as well. It's nice, isn't it?
Mm.
Now we get even older.
Although we can always agree that the spinny belt was the better one.
Now we get a bit older, and then we get really old in a minute. Here we have the big round WWE Time Championship. This is the belt that replaced the Winged Eagle. And it is so much different. You've got a thin plastic plate here, where you've got this picture of the belt, plates on either side. It's got some texture to it, but it is a much thinner rubber to it, foam rubber. You've got that bit where you could cut them down to size again, which means that they had that, got rid of it, and then brought it back again.
That makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, but it would make this belt really tiny, and it does look nice. This is actually how the belts were originally made, and doing this video has made me want to get some early 90s WWE titles, because they didn't have as much detail as this. Like this one here has all loads of gold, whereas the original ones were more black, and then the picture was done in like thin gold lines. I'll have to try and get some of those, but I wanted them in the 90s and I could never get them. It was harder to get this stuff back then, to be honest, in the early 90s. The only time I ever saw them up for sale was, you wouldn't know this channel, a channel called QVC. And QVC is a funny thing. You watch telly for hours, something comes up that you want to buy, then you got to phone them up and order it over the phone. And they had a wrestling special once, and the belts were on there, but I couldn't get my mum and dad to buy me them. Shame that.
Wonder why.
I know. And now we have my oldest belt. This is from WCW, World Championship Wrestling. And this is probably the first company that I started watching on a regular basis. And back in the 90s, when I started being able to buy wrestling figures, I couldn't buy them on the internet. We didn't have it. And the internet didn't really come really popular until the last 15 years, something like that, where more people had it. So I used to buy magazines, and on the back of there they used to have adverts for companies that would sell you belts. And they had adverts for these things, and you used to have to look at this list on the back of the leaflet, phone them up and ask them for what you wanted. And then do you know what I had to do after that?
What?
I had to post them a check for the amount of money that they said, along with a piece of paper with the writing of everything that I've asked them for. And then you might get exactly the one that you think you're going to get, or you might get one slightly different, because they were buying it from America and bringing them over. And it was a lot harder to get like wrestling figures then. But this one is so light. Like feel that. And then compare it to like that one.
And
That's
got a bit
heavier.
of weight.
Yeah. But this one's like...
Probably balanced on Super's head.
And feel the rubber, the foam. Like this foam is so... It feels fragile. Like really does feel fragile. And this one's actually different to the rest. And the reason is, these are all made in China, whereas WCW is made in the USA. So I don't want to say this too much, but the build quality of the USA one isn't as good as the Chinese one. Sorry, but I'm sorry to my cousin if you're watching this, but it's true. So the foam feels so much lighter, it feels so brittle, and the plates, like, you just get the style with WCW for it. It doesn't even fit fully in the hole in there. It's glued on, so if the glue ever gives way, that's falling out. But the good thing is, you've got the actual plate in the middle. Does look quite nice. Now, some of you might be looking at this going, I was a WCW fan, and I don't remember this belt. Well, that's because at one stage, WCW was WCW NWA. And that was with the big gold belt. And they had a falling out with the NWA, and they brought in this belt. And this was going to be the WCW title. And then some things happened along the way. So at one point there was 2 titles in WCW. And then finally they got rid of this one and stuck to the big gold belt. So this one was around for a little while. You would have seen people like Vader holding this belt. And it's a nice looking belt. Nice piece of history. Especially when you think you very rarely see this belt around. But you always find a big gold belt. That's what they call it. Just a big gold belt.
Very creative name.
Yeah. Now we come to the last one that I should have shown earlier, but it doesn't matter that I didn't, because it's done in a different way. All these came just as they are, but this one...
I thought you had 2 down there.
I have, but one's not wrestling.
What was it in?
Boxing.
Oh.
This one is the $1 million title. The $1 million championship. Ted Dibiase's belt. Now, it's quite a funny story to this, because there's a lot of things towards this. Ted DiBiase was supposed to be gonna be a world champion, but some things happened along the way that sort of stopped him getting it properly for a time. So what they did was they come up with a storyline where he bought the title from Andre the Giant. But President Jack Tunney overruled that, stripped him off the belt, and had a tournament, and it ended up going to Randy Savage. And there's a lot of stories as to why that happened. But he then went on to make his own title, the $1 million title. Now here's the thing. In storyline, these $3 signs are meant to be full of diamonds. That's what makes it a $1 million title. But they weren't. They were cubic zirconia. But they wanted to have some value to it. So guess what they did?
What?
They put 3 real diamonds in the back of the belt. And so that way, when they had the paperwork for it and had to show it in customs, they knew that it was worth a lot of money. So this belt is all plastic around here, and then there's rubber on the back. But you had a figure of the $1 million man, and you also got a little figure belt as well. So you've got the $1 million belt there, and the $1 million belt here. Now, I'm going to quickly open it, and I'll show you what the back looks like. Because I'll move the figure, and this is going to be the last belt we show. So the back is all foam, but they've made it look like the $1 million belt, with the dollar signs going all the way around it. And this is a belt that I wanted for years and years and years, and when I finally got this one, I was really happy, and I love this belt. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've come to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let us know what belt is your favourite. Let us know when you started watching wrestling. And please, if you would consider subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. Especially with YouTube, they're a bit funny now because things keep happening with YouTube. And there's certain milestones that you've got to hit before you can actually do anything with your channel. So if you would subscribe to our channel, I'd really appreciate it. I've got some other wrestling videos ideas to come up. And we've got loads of other things happening. But for now, I know what's his favourite title belt. And also, I'll answer the question of who was my favourite wrestler of all time. It was none other than Bret the Hitman Hart. That's why he's called Bret, even though he doesn't remember. Burke.
How dare you?
Well, for now, thank you very much for watching. Have an awesome day. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. And he's waving. And guess what?
What?
He doesn't think you're being very nice.
Ugh.